Right, so while the people of Ilford North now have a candidate in Leanne Mohammed that they can get behind to depose Wes Streeting come the next election, seeing a key pro-apartheid Israel Labour MP hopefully fall there, regular viewers will know a similar campaign has been rumbling along in the background in Holborn and St Pancras as well, the seat of the biggest brill-creamed political scalp of them all, Sir Keir Rodney Starmer himself. An organisation called OCISA, which stands for Organised Corbyn-Inspired Socialist Alliance, the very epitome of everything we've come to know Starmer himself hates and despises, and is purged from the party by any means available to him, sprang up with the very specific aim of not being a political party itself, not being affiliated to any either, but to pull together the ways and means through experienced campaigners and organisers driven away and disgusted by Keir Starmer and what he's done to the Labour Party, and of course bring the funding in as well, to stand an independent candidate against Starmer, with sufficient backing to make potentially toppling him a reality. Since last November, they've been accepting candidate applications, whittling down their shortlist to a shortlist of now 3, and people who have joined OCISA's digital constituency, anyone who has donated to or joined OCISA, had a vote for one of these 3 candidates. But one in particular stands out from the rest for me, because this guy's everything Keith isn't, and his standing for selection should absolutely terrify Starmer. Right, so OCISA, things have suddenly got very exciting this week as they published their shortlist of candidates prepared to stand against Keir Starmer in Holborn and St Pancras. It's been months and months of planning, fundraising. Membership of the group has soared, with people all over the country signing up, such as the disgust of what Starmer has done to the Labour Party, and the thought of taking the fight to him personally in his seat, on a political level obviously, has had enormous appeal. A great many of these people may well descend on Holborn and St Pancras to campaign against Starmer, and with this OCISA candidate too, not just support from afar. There's no underestimating just how nationally disliked Keir Starmer is, and that really is borne out by OCISA's existence. Never before has a grassroots organisation risen up with the specific aim of taking down one particular MP, and yet attracted support from all over the country to do it, not just from within the constituency itself. That's not to say this is an easy job, because Starmer's majority is huge, and Holborn has been a Labour seat solidly since it was created in 1983, and before that the area hadn't really seen any other parties hold it since the 1960s. Starmer's majority right now is a whopping 27,763. But that, of course, was won under Corbyn, and he hasn't had to defend his seat since he started showing his true colours, his Tory Tribute Act colours. How much of an effect can that have on matters? Well, I'll bet my bottom dollar his majority shrinks, but can it be toppled? My goodness, you'd need one heck of a candidate to do that, wouldn't you? You'd need a literal anti-Starmer, someone who is everything Starmer isn't, and that somebody would need all the support a party candidate could expect, both in campaigners and campaign funds and organisation, which fortunately are there in this case, courtesy of OCISA's preparations. The shortlist is down to 3, and not to dismiss the talents of 2 of these 3 people, but there really is only one name anyone is talking about here, and that is somebody a lot of socialists, former Corbyn supporters like myself, have said we would like to see stand against Starmer, and it just might now be about to become a reality. The person I'm talking about is Andrew Feinstein. Andrew Feinstein is the Jewish son of Holocaust survivors and is a massive long-time critic of Starmer. He is a self-described proud lefty Jew. He's an activist, a filmmaker and an author, and also a former politician in his native South Africa. However, he now lives in Holborn and St Pancras. In South Africa, he was elected to stand for the African National Congress under the then leadership of Nelson Mandela in the very first democratic elections held there back in 1994. His time as a South African MP largely spent working as an advisor on economics and finance, and served on the Finance Committee. Notably, Feinstein introduced the first ever motion on the Holocaust in South African history, stating that previous suffering by the Afrikaners at the hands of the British, or of the Jews by the Nazis, justified the brutal oppression suffered by black South Africans or Palestinians. This was back in the 1990s now. Feinstein stood down from South African politics in 2001, resigning in objection to the failure to investigate the corrupt South African arms deal, which was notable in its corruption due to procurement. Think COVID VIP lanes, but with guns. Feinstein wrote a book on the subject called The Shadow World Inside the Global Arms Trade. He moved to London after his political career in South Africa ended, and has been no less busy here, albeit in a less legislative manner. He's the director of Shadow World Investigations, formerly called Corruption Watch UK, which specialises in the global arms trade, but also investigates other forms of corruption. He's also a board member of one of my favourite alternative news outlets, Declassified UK. He's a staunch opponent of apartheid in all its forms, a lifelong supporter of the plight of the Palestinian people, which his native South Africa have shown too, by taking Israel to the International Court of Justice. So we have a Corbyn supporting, economically competent, I assume former Labour member at this point, former anti-apartheid politician who recognises that same apartheid in Palestine and is very much still against it, obviously, but who also happens to be Jewish and has spent decades campaigning against arming corrupt regimes and the corruption that goes on within the global arms trade. Now set that against Starmer, a pro-Israel, economically incompetent, stuffed Palestine weaponiser of anti-Semitism, whose policies appear to be dictated by whoever is opening their chequebook. He might have a big majority, but he'll have a massive problem on his hands if Feinstein is selected to stand as OCISA's candidate, and I believe we will find that out tomorrow, which will be on Sunday the 11th of February at time of writing, on the Not the Andrew Marr Show, who it is. But as one of Starmer's constituents, Feinstein has been a vocal critic of his MP, even from the point Starmer took over from Jeremy Corbyn, calling him inauthentic and lacking charisma. Well, I disagree with that. Inauthentic, I think, is generous, so he's a barefaced, brazen, bloody liar, but then I dare say I lack Andrew Feinstein's diplomatic touch to these things. Nonetheless, he regularly gives Starmer the treatment. Just yesterday, he tweeted out, Starmer has yet to say anything about the ICJ ruling that there is a plausible risk that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. A human rights lawyer who has lost all humanity. He's also been out regularly on all of those pro-Palestine marches that have been going through London and recently spoke to Migration Films whilst on one about the recent ICJ ruling against Israel. And on that he said, so many people are now seeing Israel for what it is. And what it is right now is a genocidal rogue state. The ruling, we knew that Israel would ignore it. How did we know? Because they told us so. Just as how do we know they are perpetrating a genocide in Gaza? Because their president, their prime minister, the head of the IDF have all told us so. The significance of this ruling is that South Africa will now have to go back to the court and demand immediate action against Israel, which within 2 hours had already started violating the ruling by continuing to slaughter innocent Palestinians. But there is an even broader importance of that ruling, is it makes it incredibly difficult legally for our governments in the UK, the United States, Germany and across Western Europe to continue to provide the weapons that are being used to slaughter Palestinians. So now we, as the people who pay our politicians' salaries, we have to tell them over and over again that what they are doing is not in our name. They've got to stop selling arms to Israel and they've got to call a ceasefire now. And we have got to ensure that whenever there are elections, nobody who has not supported the ceasefire should be voted for unless they are behind the call for an immediate ceasefire and have been since this genocide started, and if they demand an end to British arms sales to Israel. Holborn and St Pancras have a very special opportunity, potentially, a very special candidate if Feinstein comes out on top of the OCISA selections tomorrow, as I sincerely hope he does. The For the Many network, the left-wing grassroots alliance seeking to unite the left again, have already endorsed Andrew Feinstein as their choice. And honestly, if anyone aside from Jeremy Corbyn himself had what it takes to take down Starmer and that massive majority he still enjoys, Andrew Feinstein absolutely can. It's been a very exciting development this week to discover that he put himself forward for this. Should he get the candidacy, things will get very, very exciting for once around Keir Starmer, something we rarely ever are able to say. Meanwhile, however, we don't need to wait that long to potentially see a large majority fall, as Labour hanging on to the seat of Rochdale in a general election year, having been 14 years out of power, as they should be looking forward to increasing that majority, instead looks rather ropey, as George Galloway may well snatch it away from them, and deservedly so, given the Tory-esque conduct of the Starmer regime. You can find out all about that story on this video here. Well worth a watch even if I say it myself, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.